Welcome back to the workshop. Happy New Year. It's 2024. What I'd like to talk to you today about is some of the Craftsman tools that I got from my father. Went back to Iowa this last year, got a bunch of his tools, and I made this box, as you know, with the pivot lid to put them in, for those that didn't go up on the wall or in the Dutch chest. Now, Craftsman tools, he had a lot of tools, has a lot of tools. He still has some of his tools. I took a bulk of them, but he still has several of them. Craftsman tools back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were sort of not a tool standard, but a lot of people bought them. Most towns had a Sears and Roebuck store nearby or in them, and so you'd go to the Sears store if you needed a tool for a project. And this is before the days of Home Depot, Lowe's, and some of the big box stores that we have today. And so department stores were where you bought your tools, certainly before the days of the internet. So, and then there were some small town, hardware stores. Ace was around, still is, and so are some of those small hardware stores. But Sears, Roebuck was kind of the place where a lot of people went and bought tools, and my dad was one of them. And so he had a lot of Craftsman tools, and so I'm going to show some of those to you today. Some of these you may remember or may still have. You may have remembered buying them. So let's check out some of those tools. Something I remember Craftsman making a lot of were screwdrivers. And here's a few screwdrivers from the collection that he had. There might be more in here, but you can't see the word Craftsman anymore. So these I pulled out because they specifically say Craftsman on them. Let's turn that around so you can see it. Very interesting. Now this is a large Phillips, probably a number 3 tip. They all had this sort of hard plastic handles to them. Some of them are a certain kind of plastic that we now know is breaking down. These are probably that plastic that's breaking down, but I am not noticing any breakdown of that sort. They usually have a smell to them, and these are not smelling yet, which is good. You can definitely tell that the handles on this one are a lot darker, more of that yellow amber color than this one, and they might have been the same, and just they broke down differently. Who knows? This has obviously been used for some other projects. You got some paint, and maybe some caulk on it as well. I mean, well-used tools. I don't collect tools that are in pristine order. I collect tools that were used. That's the way they were done. This is it does say Forged WF on it. Craftsman and Vanadium. I believe Vanadium was what this material is, or something to that effect. Two other items here. This doesn't say Craftsman on it, but I'm assuming it came from the same set that this came from. This one does say Sears Craftsman on it, and it's one of those little, the idea is you keep it in your pocket, and you've got basically a couple slotted screwdrivers, and maybe even sometimes these flat sort of screwdrivers are actually Phillips. And so it basically gives you 4 slotted screwdrivers and possibly a Phillips as well. It's hard to tell what the original, back when, I will say that when, these tools were purchased, the Phillips screwdriver was sort of a big deal. Sort of today like the square and the torque bits are a big deal. Back then the Phillips was the big deal, and slotted, flathead, although I'm not supposed to use that word because I get yelled at on the comments, a slotted screw was kind of the big deal, the main one used back then, and they were getting into Phillips. Or at least that was my experience. Now, additional to that, we have a Craftsman micro set. This is the number 4104, and so it has 6 screwdrivers in it, but he had 2 really tiny ones. And so this is one of the last things I took when I was there back in November. And I don't know, back in the day you could have used this on some really precise work. Now it's pretty much used for getting into electronic equipment, computer equipment, that sort of thing. And I already have some small bits for that. But this is just a nice set, the way it was put together. You can hold the one end and turn while you. I mean, this is really nice quality stuff, and so I had to I had to include that in my collection, and I'll use it, of course, as the need arises. So here are 3 clamps, say Malleable on one end, USA, on the other side, say Craftsman. So this is probably a 2-inch clamp, and this is probably a 3-inch clamp that they sell, and just your basic C clamp. So and then this one, also a Craftsman. I'm not really sure what kind of clamp this is. If you know what this is, let me know in the comments. He had it, and I didn't really ask because when I found it, he wasn't there. So I'm not sure he would have remembered anyway. But this is an interesting clamp, and hey, why not take it? And I can maybe use it in my shop. So these items here, this is a cold chisel. It's a nail setting tool. This is a punch, and these two are probably also either a different kind of punch or a cold chisel, all Craftsman brand. So next item here, we have a block plane, actual woodworking tool here. In its original box, block plane, no distinguishing marks there. And the pictures on the side show a rabbet plane, a bench plane, spokes shave, all kinds of different things that I guess Craftsman sold once upon a time. I didn't know that. This is kind of in here. There we go. Block plane. And it's got the original instructions. So the original instructions, the plain facts. And so this is sort of a one inclusive about all their planes. I can get it open. And some different saws that they sell. There's ads in here in addition to the actual instructions. Parts of the plane, how to adjust the plane, sharpen, that sort of thing. All in here. Interesting thing is on the back, it shows a Surform rasp, or forming tool is what they call it, but it's basically a rasp. This is the one my father had. This is actually made by Stanley, but it's a Stanley Surform. This is a Surform by Sears Craftsman. I'm guessing this is the same tool. It certainly looks like it in this picture. It's got that same abrasions here on the edge, same kind of handle, same kind of body. I can't tell. The one in the picture may not have this bridge piece. But otherwise, it looks very much like the one here. So, is this a Stanley tool? Is it a Craftsman tool that somebody stuck their label on? But for them both to be called the Surform is kind of interesting. So anyway, it's another tool that I got from my dad. Going back to the block plane, so here's the block plane. It's an interesting color. There's sort of a olive green, but sort of that shiny color that you saw back in the 60s, maybe into the 70s. A wooden knob on the front, adjustment rod on the back, made in the U.S. I don't know how often he used this. It doesn't look like it's been used that much. Here's another block plane from my dad that he said he had in a kind of a toolbox that he had early on in life when he was a kid. It's also made in the U.S. I don't have a lot of information on this one, and I'm also, made in USA. Also in the process of I don't restore tools, but cleaning them up, getting them. The blade for this is really rusty, so I'm going to put that in the Evaporust. And then if you compare them to my other two block planes, here's a Cobalt from Lowe's and a Miller Falls Antique. This is the one I use a lot. The one from the Craftsman is about the same size as all the others. Slightly bigger than the Cobalt, but preferable sort of to the Miller Falls. It does not have that front end adjuster that these two have. This one does not. So that means that the bed, fence, whatever this thing is, doesn't move. And of course it does on both this one and this one. Next up, we have these two chrome edge flat files. These are 8 inch flat files. I would say these are for metal, because metal is usually that flat surface like this with the cross filing on them. The package says, this one says Chrome Edge, and this one says Sears Craftsman Chrome Edge. Question is Chrome Edge a line from Sears Craftsman, or are they just selling them? But there you have the original information. This one is a bastard single cut. This is a double cut bastard. So, and this one also has information. They both have information of being from Simpson Sears Limited. And so those are two files. Next item is an ignition gauge, and with decimal metric marking. It's in very good condition. It's a tool that I'm not sure if he used. It's in really good condition. This is a 40801 Craftsman, made in the USA. These things, they come with 14 blades, 8 wires, and an electrode adjustment tool. And so the idea of this thing is that it allows you to make necessary adjustments to engine breakers and spark plug gaps for optimal engine performance. And so when you measure the spark plug gap and how to properly open the breaker gaps year after year, it extends the life of your equipment. I don't know how to use this thing. There are a couple videos on how to use these. I'm guessing Dad had this for use with his lawnmower. I mean, that's, you know, unless he was messing with spark plugs on the cars, and that's very possible. He did a lot more mechanic work than I did, the very basic stuff. If you had seen my video on the Gagnon machinist chest, you'll remember this tool, which was, the owner of that said it was a welding tool. But it does feature this tool inside, which has a similar version on this one, actually identical. This calls it an electrode adjustment tool. And so it's interesting to learn that that's what that is. And so on this welding tool, in addition to this spark plug or ignition gauge. So if you had seen the simple workbench, you know that I had these nut drivers, Craftsman set of 7 nut driver set. Go from the 3/16 all the way to 1/2 inch with the sizes in between. I would say they're in very good condition. He must have bought it for a specific use and either didn't use them, or a lot of times I think he would buy stuff for one use and never use it again. I think there's others watching who have probably done that themselves, so that's not just a one-person thing. So it's a really nice set. That's where I made this rack for holding it on to the workbench. So additionally, we also have this. This just says Sears. It's a Sears Vise, and so yeah, it's a pretty good span for the mouth. And of course, there's a what they call not an andiron, but anvil on the back, which I do plan to use. And then of course it can rotate. So there we go. I can rotate it over here. If I want to have it over here, it will also rotate over here. I was not smart enough to do this so it would rotate all the way out here, but there's really no reason for me to be using it out here. I would most likely have it this way or this way, but just the fact that it moves is a nice touch for me, and that's probably common with a lot of vices, but and it was stuck sort of in place. The rotating part was stuck in place for a long time, and I was able to separate it using thread cutter oil, and that did the job. And what is Craftsman tools without some wrenches and pliers? This is a socket wrench piece from a socket wrench set. I don't have the rest of the set because I have my own set, but this was part of Dad's toolbox, the one that this one is replacing. And so I went ahead and took it. And we got a couple just, basic mechanic wrenches here. We got one of these things. This one has tape on it, probably because it was actually used on pipe or something that he was trying to protect the surface from the metal teeth. And this thing, it's one of those, it is a Craftsman. This is one of those, this is a number 4117. It's basically a slotted screwdriver ratcheting. So it's a ratcheting screwdriver, two different heads. So it's not like the kinds that we have today. If you have one, here's a modern Craftsman that I bought, I think, at either Lowe's or Ace Hardware. I want to say this came from a Lowe's store. So this is a modern one, same basic idea. You put one of these tips into here and you can go whichever way you want. Then you can also do it on the other side. So this is a modern Craftsman. This would be that older version, and you can change, there's a little slot thing, you change which direction you want to go. But again, you're limited to a slotted screw. So it's a nice item for the collection. But if I need one, I will probably grab this, as I often do. One additional wrench that he had in the toolbox that I took note of and want to go ahead and show you is this one. This is, I'm going to guess, a automotive wrench. It says USA, and very faintly it's got the Ford emblem, the Ford motor car emblem. And so, was this made and sold to be used on cars? I will say on the other side it has a letter M and two dots, two horizontal dots following the M. The one thing I've noticed that this is good for is it is precisely the width needed for unscrewing the bolts, the nuts that hold the large vise to a table. He already had lag bolts and nuts, and this is what secures the nuts. And so well, I noticed that, so this is what I've used every time I've had to loosen or tighten them. So that pretty much is the Craftsman tools that I got from my dad's collection that are now part of my collection. There are some additional tools that I got from that, including a couple of these Dunlap tape measures, which are really nice for doing flat lays on Instagram. A couple tools from this Powercraft brand or model or whatever. Let's see, what else we got here? We got this three-sided, three-tipped nut driver, the plastic sleeve. Not sure where this is from. I think I found it one time. You don't see a lot of these around anymore. It's a very interesting outlet tester. Put each end in an outlet, and I guess this thing lights up. It does have a little clip for putting in your pocket. I will not be using this. I have, newer versions of. The newer version of that is something like this thing, and so this is a nice thing to have in the collection. And then other things like there's a Nicholson 4-in-1 or 4-in-hand. If you'd seen the video on the hobby rasp, somebody had suggested I get one of these. Here's a vintage one that probably works better than a modern one. So I have used it a little bit on a current project. And then, old screwdrivers that have kind of broken over time, and I keep them because they're part of the history of it. And then a little pocket knife of my dad's. I have a separate video on this on my Richo Hobby and Art channel. Just look up my dad's pocket knife, and there's more on that. So all in all, a good collection. And there's a few other pieces here and there. So if you have any interest in seeing any of these tools used in a little more detail, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, a lot of good tools, a lot of them that I'm actually using on projects, such as Puzzle Box 6. That is coming along. Hopefully we've got it down to this point, and hopefully I will get it to start making the stand and get further in that. Thanks for watching.